Back in 1996, Nikon, one of the best known and most loved camera brands, decided it was time to enter the consumer digital camera market, and it did it with the COOLPIX 100. This camera cost around $500, had 1/3 of a megapixel, and Nikon solved the thorny problem of expensive memory cards by actually building the camera into a memory card that you then slotted into a compatible laptop. Hi, I'm Gordon from Dynabytes, and in this episode I'm going to take out the COOLPIX 100 around Brighton and see how it performs a quarter of a century later. The COOLPIX 100 may have been Nikon's first consumer digital camera, but it wasn't its first digital camera entirely. In the early 90s, it collaborated with Kodak and even NASA to adapt some of its film SLRs with digital sensors and storage devices. And then in 1995, it co-developed the E2 series of digital SLRs with Fujifilm, but those were in an entirely different market. The COOLPIX 100 was its first entry at really targeting consumers. Now, back in 1996, nobody really knew what a consumer digital camera should look like, and Nikon's idea was this vertically oriented shape that 25 years later looks surprisingly contemporary, because after all, it could be mistaken kind of for a phone. However, back then mobile phones were much fatter, chunkier devices looking almost like Mars bars. However, when you do hold the COOLPIX 100 in this orientation, unlike a modern phone, the pictures do come out in the horizontal shape. However, the thing that made the COOLPIX 100 really special was the fact that it was built into a PC MCIA memory card that allowed you to slot it straight into a laptop. Now, Nikon wasn't the first company to think of this. Canon actually did it with the C300 1 year earlier. However, that camera was designed to only be used while it was slotted in a laptop. It actually got its power and its storage from the laptop that it was connected to. Once you unplugged it, you couldn't do anything. However, the COOLPIX 100 was designed to be a standalone camera. Nikon equipped the COOLPIX 100 with a 52mm equivalent lens for standardish coverage. There's also a macro mode on it, activated by sliding this lever on the side of the camera. And when you're composing with the optical viewfinder, which is the only way you are going to compose because there's no colour screen on the back, you'll see guidelines depending on whether you're focusing close or far. Now, behind the lens, Nikon fitted the camera with a 3rd megapixel CCD sensor, and that delivers images with 512, not 640, 512 by 480 pixels. There's 1 megabyte of built-in memory and 2 JPEG quality settings. You have it set to fine, you'll squeeze 21 pictures into the built-in memory. Have it set to normal and you'll get 42. The camera is powered on by a switch on the side, after which the screen on top becomes active, and it shows you some shooting information. You can see how many pictures you've got left, what quality mode you set in, and you can also vary the flash mode to automatically fire or for a red eye fill-in or to disable it entirely. And there's also a self-timer, although no tripod thread on the actual case itself. You need to actually get an accessory that grips hold of it, very much like you would with a modern phone. So maybe Nikon did have a vision of the future after all. In terms of exposure though, it is fully automatic and there is no compensation setting. So what you see is what you get, except you don't see it. Like all cameras of the day, there is no screen on the back to review your pictures, but if you had a gut feeling that it didn't quite turn out, you can push the indented erase button to delete the last picture. Now, there's no way to accidentally do this. It's indented and it's tiny, so you really need to carry around a paper clip or a pencil or a pen to actually poke that in. And it's also possible to effectively format that entire 1 megabyte memory if you're fed up with everything or you want to start from scratch. Now, at this point, regular Dynabytes viewers, welcome back by the way, thanks for watching, will know that there's 2 main challenges to using a vintage digital camera in the modern day, and they are connectivity and power. Now, in terms of power, Nikon's got you sorted, because with the COOLPIX 100, it opted for 4 AA batteries, which thankfully are still readily available today. I've got 4 rechargeable end loops in there, so no problem at all. And this was a strategy that it carried on to the COOLPIX 900 series, or at least the original model, so I'm really grateful for that. In terms of connectivity, Nikon designed the COOLPIX 100 to be as easy as possible for you to get your images out of the camera and onto your computer, at least in the late 90s anyway. What you do after taking your pictures is push 2 buttons on the side of the body, and that would detach the battery unit from the main imaging and memory unit. And as you can see, this is built into a standard PC MCIA card. And the great news is in the mid to late 90s, almost every single laptop had a PC MCIA slot that you could pop this straight into, and the camera would present itself as a removable drive that you just simply double click, open and drag those images out of. It literally couldn't be easier so long as your laptop had that slot. Now, I've got a ton of old computers, no surprise there, but they are generally not older than about 20 years, and sadly it was about that point that PCMCIA slots started becoming rare on laptops. So I actually didn't have any means at home by which I could connect this camera and extract the images. Now, I did have one idea though. Since I was reviewing other cameras that used PCIe memory cards, I thought all I should do is buy a card reader with a modern USB connection and that'd be sorted. So I ordered one and it worked absolutely fine with standard PCMCIe memory cards, but not with the COOLPIX 100. It just wouldn't wake up. It really wanted to be inserted into an old laptop of around the same era. Maybe it was feeling lonely and it wanted someone of a similar age to talk to. So what I had to do was get hold of an old laptop that would work with it. I scoured all of the second-hand and antique shops around Brighton to no avail, but eventually found a computer repair shop called Laptop Chap, and he had a bunch of older computers which did have PCIe slots in them, and he was kind enough to actually let me borrow one, onto which we installed Windows 2000, and bingo, it actually recognized the camera. You could see that because it displayed PC on the little display on the top, and it mounted itself as a standard drive that I could just copy the images out of. And once that's working, it's actually a very, very fast and easy process. It's much faster than the proprietary serial cables of the day, and there was no need to install any additional software. Typically back then you would need Twain drivers in order to extract the images from the camera, but there was none of that. You just need to get hold of a laptop with a PCMCIA card. So thank you very much to Laptop Chap in Brighton for helping me out there. Right, so I've got the images off. Let's take a look at them. Now, it's easy to look back and assume that a resolution of 512 by 480 pixels was considered high back in the day, but it wasn't. People who bought the COOLPIX 100 were under no illusions that they were buying into a very low resolution system. But like all digital cameras back then, it wasn't about quality, it was about speed and convenience. Now, if you wanted a decent quality digital image back then, in the absence of phones or high resolution digital cameras, you had to take a film picture, get it developed, and then get it scanned, and then get that copied onto your computer. It was a time-consuming process, hours at best, days at worst. However, with a digital camera, you could get those images straight away, even if they were poor quality. And you have to remember that VGA resolution was still sufficient for web use or for emailing, or even in print at small sizes. Consider estate agents or car dealerships, that sort of thing. If you wanted to produce a cheap and quick listings, then a digital camera was your friend. Now, Nikon released the COOLPIX 100 around the same time as the COOLPIX 300, which again shared a similar vertically oriented design, but used a 2.5-inch touchscreen and a stylus, and actually allowed you to record sketches, notes, and even audio clips in addition to digital images. And the sensor and lens were pretty much the same quality as the COOLPIX 100, although it did manage to get 640 by 480 pixels out of it and slightly wider coverage. However, 1 year later, in 1997, Nikon abandoned this design for something geared much more to the desires of proper photographers, and that started with the COOLPIX 900, and I have a video about it right here. Today, the COOLPIX 100 is perfect for any collector who wants a representative from the birth of digital consumer photography. Although remember that if you do actually want to get the pictures from it, you're going to need to have a laptop from the same sort of era. And I'm really glad that I had access to one and was able to bring this camera back to life and take pictures with it in 2021. So tell me, were you there at the birth of digital photography? What was your first camera? Were you there in 1996 and 1997 with these really early models, or did you jump in a bit later on? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And as before, if you enjoy what I'm doing on this channel, the best way to support me is to subscribe and watch as many of the videos as you can. It really helps a small and young channel grow. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you to Nikon for letting me borrow one of these from their archives. It was even boxed in perfect condition, so it was great to get hold of one of these and see what it can do a quarter of a century after it was released. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.